Resilient infrastructure is critical for people's well-being, quality of life, and economic prospects, irrespective of where they live. Inadequate and poorly built infrastructure blocks economic and social development. Increasing exposure to earthquakes, floods, and tropical cyclones stresses infrastructure systems. 2/3 of total economic losses in disasters are associated with infrastructure damage. As extreme weather events become more frequent and intense due to climate change, these losses are set to rise. The impact on small island developing nations and least developed countries is particularly severe. Disaster and climate resilient infrastructure is essential to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and to accelerate climate action. $94 trillion of global investment is needed to fill the infrastructure deficit by 2040. More infrastructure will be built in the next 20 years than in the last 200 years. Fortunately, achieving disaster and climate resilient infrastructure is not expensive. $1 invested in strengthened resilience generates $4 in avoided economic and social losses. The Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure is an international partnership that will support countries to build the disaster and climate resilient infrastructure they need. Championed by global leaders, CDRI will provide knowledge, technical support, and capacity development to those countries with the greatest infrastructure challenges. Join us to achieve the SDGs and accelerate climate action by making all new infrastructure disaster and climate resilient.
Namaskar, greetings from New Delhi. I am Kamal Kishore. I am a member and secretary of India's National Disaster Management Authority. I also co-chair the Executive Committee of the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. I will be hosting this morning's inaugural ceremony of the 5th edition of the International Conference on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. My co-host today is Veena Reddy. Veena Reddy is the USAID Mission Director here in Delhi, India. She is the co-chair of, the US co-chair of the Executive Committee of the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. I warmly welcome you all to this 5th edition of the International Conference on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. We've got a tremendous response from across the world. There are more than 2,200 participants from 158 countries participating in this hybrid conference. There are a couple of hundred people here in Delhi, and there will be more during the next 2 days. And the 158 countries that have joined through the video link represent a wide variety of countries from across the world, from all the continents, small island developing states. There are countries that are landlocked countries, emerging economies, the advanced economies, countries from Africa. So it's really a moment when this conference, the conversation that this conference curates has really expanded, and it is really expanding, reaching out to ever newer constituencies across the world. The other interesting thing about this, or the important thing about this edition of the conference, is that in the previous editions, we've explored the different dimensions of the problem of resilient infrastructure. What are the challenges? What are some of the barriers to achieving resilient infrastructure? And now we are transitioning to looking at solutions. Solutions that are affordable, that are scalable, that work for different contexts. So this is really a progress in the conversation itself, the content of the conversation. The other thing is that we started this conference a few years ago when CDRI was still being established, And now, after 3 years, some of the initial results of CDRI's own work are beginning to appear. So there is an opportunity to discuss that and inform CDRI's future directions too. With that, I'm quite excited about the next 2 days in participating in this conference, engaging with colleagues and friends from across the world, and really exploring how we can work together and take this whole area of work to the next level. Over to you, Veena.
Good morning. Thank you. And good morning to everybody. I too am excited for the next 2 days of this conference, touching upon many important themes. I see CDRI as really a story of collaboration by enthusiastic, passionate experts like all of you who are here today, whether virtually or in person. So I just want to appreciate how much expertise is in the room and how many of you are devoting your time for this important purpose. So thank you for that, and thank you to the CDRI Secretariat for putting on an amazing conference again. And I just touch upon the United States collaboration with CDRI. We've been very, very excited to be a part of this global effort and to build upon this term, building upon the leadership from both India and the United Kingdom, which was the co-chair last term. And we have been focusing on increasing the participation of U.S. experts, both from government and private sector, in the operations of CDRI as well as programs. And we've also worked with all of you, with all of the members, on a refined strategic approach that will continue to provide more and more value for members, and also to reach out to new communities of practice, including the private sector, including academic institutions, and we'll hear a little bit more at the next session about our work with academic institutions. So this has been an amazing journey that CDRI has taken, and none of this would have been possible without sustained leadership at the highest levels. India has not only taken on the leadership role and convening authority of CDRI, is also elevating disaster resilience in the G20 context in this year of its presidency. Again, what a wonderful contribution to the world. So with that, I'd like to introduce the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India. Thank you.
Namaskar. Excellencies, heads of state, academics, business leaders, policymakers, and my dear friends from all over the world, my greetings to everyone. Welcome to India. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. The occasion of the 5th edition of this International Conference on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, ICDRI 2023, is indeed a special one. Friends, the CDRI arose from a global vision. In a closely connected world, the impact of disasters will not just be local. Disaster in one region can have a big impact on a completely different region. Therefore, our response has to be integrated, not isolated. Friends, in just a few years, over 40 countries have become part of the CDRI. This conference is becoming an important platform. Advanced economies and developing economies, large and small countries, the global north and the global south, are coming together at this forum. It is also encouraging that it is not just governments that are involved. Global institutions, domain experts, and the private sector also play a role. Friends, as we discuss infrastructure, some priorities have to be remembered. The CDRI's theme for this year's conference is related to delivering resilient and inclusive infrastructure. Infrastructure is not only about returns, but also about reach and resilience. Infrastructure must leave none behind and serve the people even during time of crisis. Further, a holistic view of infrastructure is needed. Social and digital infrastructure are as important as transport infrastructure. Friends, during disasters, it is natural that our hearts go out to those who are suffering. Relief and rescue take priority, and rightly so. Resilience is about how quickly systems can ensure the return of normal life. Resilience is built in the times between one disaster and another. Studying past disasters and learning lessons from them is the way. This is where the CDRI and this conference play a key role. Friends, each nation and region faces disasters of different kinds. Societies evolve local knowledge related to infrastructure that can withstand disasters. While modernizing infrastructure, such knowledge needs to be used intelligently. Modern technology with local insights can be great for resilience. Further, if documented well, local knowledge may become a global best practice. Friend, some of the initiatives of the CDRI are already showing its inclusive intent. The Infrastructure for Resilient Island State Initiative for IRIS benefits many island nations. These islands may be small, but every human living in them matters to us. Just last year, the Infrastructure Resilient Accelerator Fund was announced. This $50 million fund has generated immense interest among developing nations. The commitment of financial resources is key to the success of initiatives. Friends, recent disasters have reminded us of the scale of challenges we face. Let me give you a few examples. We had heat waves across India and Europe. Many island nations were harmed by earthquakes, cyclones, and volcanoes. Earthquakes in Turkey and Syria caused great loss of lives and property. Your work is becoming more relevant. There are great expectations from the CDRI. Friends, this year, India is also bringing the world together through its G20 presidency. At the president of G20, we have already included the CDRI in many working groups. The solutions you explore here will receive attention at the highest levels of global policy making. This is an opportunity for CDRI to contribute to infrastructure resilience, especially against climate risk and disasters. I am confident that the deliberations at ICDRI 2023 will provide a pathway to achieve the shared vision of a more resilient world.
Well, those were some inspiring words, especially the theme of all of us coming together, whether North-South, governments, international organizations, academics, private sector, civil society, and all around a goal where we can galvanize together to, as the Prime Minister said, leave no one behind. And we can learn from local knowledge while applying modern technology to people, to solutions that really work for people, and to keep the needs of people at the center, and that we can advance resiliency to a myriad of threats, as the Prime Minister mentioned, around the shared vision of a more resilient society. So with that, I thank the Prime Minister and hand it over to Kamal for our next speaker.
Thank you, Veena. That was indeed a very inspiring message by the Prime Minister, and I particularly latched on to one statement that if we document local innovation, local best practice well, it could well become globally applicable. And in that context, a number of CDRI member countries, they are doing a lot of innovation, a lot of good work, which is achieving results for the people they seek to serve, those solutions seek to serve. And it is really important that we bring that up to a global regional platform, facilitate peer-to-peer exchange. And in this context, one country which really impresses me a lot is the work that has been done in Bangladesh. Over years, over 1.5 decades, they've reduced cyclone-related mortality by 99%. A lot of the work that they've done at the community level has been a source of inspiration for the work we've done in India. And I don't think it would be an overstatement to say that many aspects of our own National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Program have been inspired by successes in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is also on the forefront of developing locally relevant, effective approaches to climate change adaptation. All of this is adding up and providing very concrete development gains to the country as well. They are soon to graduate out of being an LDC, a least developed country. So we are indeed very lucky today that we have a message from the Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Madam Sheikh Hasina. Let's hear her.
Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. I am happy to join the inaugural session of the 5th International Conference on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. I congratulate Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi for hosting this timely event. Bangladesh joined this platform in July 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the adverse impacts of climate change, we are facing unpredictable climate events and disaster, which are damaging our establishments and resources in massive scales. Strong and resilient physical infrastructure is needed to withstand and adapt to changing conditions and from shocks and stresses. Recently, the world witnessed a series of catastrophes like massive earthquakes in Turkey, Syria, and Afghanistan, and hurricane in Caribbean, US, and Canada, and flood in South Africa. Last year, we in Bangladesh experienced a series of natural calamities causing huge economic losses. It is important that all future infrastructure, construction, and system must be resilient to disasters to protect our investment. Excellencies, as one of the most climate vulnerable countries, Bangladesh frequently experiences natural calamities like flood, cyclone, tidal surge, storm, drought, and thunderbolt. IPCC report 2022 predicts Bangladesh is at the risk of 2 to 9% of GDP losses by the mid and end of the century due to climate change. Our major response to natural disaster dates back in 1973 when father of the nation Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman formulated Cyclone Preparedness Program. Under the program, he built 1,000 cyclone shelters in coastal areas. People used to call these centers as Mujib Killa. Early in 1970, a devastating tidal surge claimed about 1 million lives in southern Bangladesh in absence of resilient infrastructures. In 2009, our government established the Bangladesh Climate Trust Fund with own resources. Nearly 800 projects have so far been implemented at a cost of US $480 million. During our recent presidency of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, we launched Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan to build a climate resilient, prosperous country. In 2022, our government launched the National Adaptation Plan with the projected need for US $230 billion by 2050. Earlier, we formulated a long-term Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100 with the aim of building a resilient and prosperous delta for our future generations. My government now attaches importance to science-based infrastructure design and implementation. We recognize the need for involving our local communities to make infrastructure work for them. We have implemented 1,000 flood control, drainage and irrigation schemes to cover more than 6 million hectares of land. Our government has carried out dredging and re-excavating of 1,400 kilometers of rivers. We have built nearly 22,000 kilometers of embankment alongside 139 coastal boulders. The infrastructure are giving protection to more than 20 million flood vulnerable people. We have so far conducted 1,229 kilometers of riverbank protection work. For disaster response, we have built 4,530 cyclone shelters, some of which are also serve as schools in regular times. We are now constructing 550 Mujib Killas on raised ground for multiple uses, including sheltering people and livestock during natural calamities. Under our flagship Ashran project, we have so far built 700,000 houses, and those were handed over to the landless and homeless people at free of cost. These houses are strong enough to endure any natural disaster. We also built 139 five-story buildings in Cox's Bazar to rehabilitate climate-displaced people. We are scaling up nature-based solutions like coastal green belt, floating vegetable cultivation, and millions of palm tree plantation. We are using our local level trained volunteers as well as digital information and service centers to provide early warning. As a result of our action, the number of deaths due to natural disasters has decreased significantly in recent years. The global community also recognized the efforts of Bangladesh, and as recognition, we have been awarded with Champion of the Earth and many more accolades. Ladies and gentlemen, since origin of the climate change are global, the solution and management would have also to be global. Only if the global efforts and individual countries' efforts are streamlined through responsive policy, planning, and governance, the actions are likely to be successful. Bangladesh is ready to join any initiative at the regional and global levels dealing with the impacts of climate change. I call upon for coordinated global efforts and shared vision for climate adaptation, mitigation, and resilient infrastructures. We believe commitment and compliance on financing mechanisms are indispensable for addressing the unforeseen crisis. A greater sense of solidarity among the governments, international and regional organizations, private sectors are required to build a sustainable and resilient future for all. At the same time, we need to bring changes in our way of thinking in this discourse by incorporating science, technology, innovation, and resilient transition. Once again, I would like to reiterate Bangladesh's commitment to working with the global community hand in hand to ensure a better world for all of us. Thank you all.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for that message. Tremendous leadership and grand vision for resilience outlined in those few minutes. Three things that really stood out at me. One was the focus on community. The Prime Minister's remark that, community, the infrastructure must serve the communities it is designed to serve. Innovative initiatives like multipurpose, resilient community infrastructure, which is raised to withstand floods and storm surges, really the focus on community. And the second thing is, in the initial part of her remarks, she talked about linking this whole thing with the larger economic and development agenda of the country. She talked about how it links to the prospects of economic growth in the country, how it is really important to allocate specific resources to catalyze adaptive action in the country. And finally, the point that she made about integrating gray and green infrastructure, a specific mention of nature-based solutions, how nature-based solutions have to be integrated with the gray infrastructure. All of that really represents a comprehensive approach to pursuing resilient infrastructure. I think there couldn't have been a better way to sort of segue into the next session, because the Prime Minister's remarks illustrated some very specific homegrown solutions, combined with an openness to engage with the world, to engage with the region, and really show a global leadership in advancing the agenda of resilience to disaster and climate risks. With that, thank you very much. We come to the end of this inaugural session. Quite looking forward to working with you all over the next 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.